I'm really big on asking the question. Like, I feel like if I don't ask it, I'll never know the answer. I'd much rather hear no from somebody. I go to a lot of writers conferences, and I always tell everybody, like, if you're at Thriller Fest in New York and you get into an elevator and, Lee Child is standing next to you, you've got 15 seconds. You can either talk to him about your book, possibly get a blurb out of him, or just, strike up some kind of friendship, or you can stand there quietly and watch the numbers tick by, and that's 15 seconds go away, and, the door opens and he's gone, and that moment is gone. And, as writers, we're all introverts. So none of us like to step out from behind our desk and talk to other people. Like, it's just not in us. Take the introvert hat off and put the extrovert hat on when it comes to marketing and dealing with the business side.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Okay, everybody, so close your eyes and imagine an island surrounded in fog. In the distance, a crumbling house beckons with whispers of the past. This is the realm where J.D. Barker conjures his stories, painting pictures of the fears we all keep locked away. With every word, Barker dares us to set our imaginations free, to chase the ideas that haunt us. He's a trailblazer, forging through a new path of the wilderness of publishing, and he's here to take us on the same path. Welcome to our episode today. We're going to descend into the depths of the brilliant J.D. Barker, mastermind behind the novel Something I Keep Upstairs. We're going to chat about his spellbinding stories and discover some writing tips as well. So get ready. J.D. Barker, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around, because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. It's a really cool, story, a great premise. I love the, the eerie vibes that come from it. So I think that's some really good stuff to talk about. First off, just to kind of talk about your life and your experiences. You kind of discovered storytelling at an early age, though. So what drew you to ghost stories as a child?
I've been writing pretty much my whole life. I grew up without a TV in the house, so we were reading at, I think I started around 3. By the time I got into kindergarten, I read all the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew mysteries, moved on to some of the classics like Charles Dickens and stuff like that. Scary stuff has always been my go-to, though. I think the very first adult book I ever picked up, or what I consider to be an adult book, was Dracula. I was 8 years old. I was at a yard sale with my mom. She owned an antique store. And I remember seeing it on the top of a box. It was 25 cents. I picked it up. The cover looked very scary. I didn't think she'd let me buy it. But she did. I took it home and it scared me half to death. Like, I think I left the lights on in my room for like 3 weeks after that. And it's the first time I ever had like an emotional reaction out of reading a book. So I've been chasing that feeling as a reader and a writer ever since. So I think that's why I kind of gravitated towards horror and suspense and thrillers and those genres.
Right. Well, that's really cute to hear. Well, first off, it must have been like any child these days to hear they don't have a TV or even like a smartphone would be like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? So it's so awesome that you kind of like embraced it and like you dove into the reading world and kind of just like discovered it yourself. I love that.
The world is very different back then. This was the 70s. There was only 3 channels and there was nothing to watch anyway. So it wasn't that big
It
of a
wasn't
deal.
much of a loss. Yeah.
No, I've got a daughter who's 8 years old and like, she's growing up with all the things and like it is so different. Like she can watch any show she wants, whatever she wants to watch it. She can pause it. Like none of that stuff existed when I was a kid. And like that's competing with the phones and the tablets and everything else. It's so different.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, it's a good thing though, because it set you on this path and it set you to picking up that Dracula book at the antique shop. And here we are now, and you're writing books that one of your novels was actually praised by Stephen King. How did that even happen? And how did that impact your career path, you think?
I honestly think it's what started my career. It was my very first book. It was called Forsaken. And in the book, I had to explain where the wife buys a journal. So just to get the book done, I wrote that she walked into Needful Things, Stephen King's store, and bought it there. Fully expected to have to change that on the next draft. But my wife read it and she said, you know what, before you change it, let's try to get King's permission to use it. So like, how do you get Stephen King's permission to do anything? So we did a little research and turned out he had a house in Florida about 10 minutes from my mom's house. So we were down there visiting. visiting. We printed out the manuscript. We hopped in the car and figured, well, we'll go over to Steve's house. He'll be outside gardening or something. We'll hand him the book. He'll give us a
We'll
big
just go
thumbs
to
up, and
Steve's
we'll
house.
yeah, yeah. It didn't work out that way. So Stephen King lives on a little island off the coast. You go over a tiny little bridge. If you make a left, you go to like the public portion of this island where the bars and the restaurants and hotels and stuff are. If you make a right, you hit the entire half of this island that Stephen King owns. There's immediately a no trespassing sign. There was a gate. There was another gate. We got like a half mile down this road and watching trees for snipers, thinking this is probably a really bad idea. So we turned around and we went back to one of the restaurants, and I called a friend of mine who knew Stephen King and told him what we were doing. He said, don't stalk Steve. He hates that. Here's his email address. Just send him the book. If he likes it, you'll probably hear back from him. If the book is terrible, he probably won't reply. And I got an email back from King a couple of days later. He loved the book. He told me to go ahead and use the reference and, let him know if I need anything else. It was very, very friendly.
Wow.
We've kept in touch over the years. He's a really, really nice guy.
That's incredible. I love that story. I mean, as somebody who I literally have like Stephen King books like above me right now. Like I think that's so cool that you're able to like get in touch with him and find him to endorse you. But I guess that one thing that people can learn from that story, anybody listening today, is I mean, don't let something hold you back. If you want to get an endorsement from somebody you really admire, like give it a try. Nothing's it's there's no harm done. You send the email and he'll respond if he likes it. If he doesn't, he won't, right? So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really big on asking the question. Like, I feel like if I don't ask it, I'll never know the answer. I'd much rather hear no, from somebody. So I'm pretty fearless when it comes to that.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be a no unless you actually ask the question, because how else are you gonna
Absolutely.
guess, right? So that's so cool. So yeah, I mean that's an important part of the writing process that a lot of authors like overlook is that there's endorsements in the that section where like you get praise from others. It kind of adds to your credibility. So it's something to always think about. Like, putting a book out there on the shelf is one thing, but doing something like that is another, kind of just enhancing. So amazing stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
I go to a lot of writers conferences, and I always tell everybody, like, if you're at Thriller Fest in New York and you get into an elevator and Lee Child is standing next to you, you've got 15 seconds. You can either talk to him about your book, possibly get a blurb out of him, or just strike up some kind of friendship, or you can stand there quietly and watch the numbers tick by, and that's 15 seconds go away, and the door opens and he's gone, and that moment is gone. And as writers, we're all introverts, so none of us like to step out from behind our desk and talk to other people. Like, it's just not in us. But
right.
you have to take that hat and kind of you flip it. You have to take the introvert hat off and put the extrovert hat on when it comes to marketing and dealing with the business side.
Absolutely. And I love that, like, I guess that little story you told, right? That the elevator story. You're right. I'm usually like on my phone or kind of just like fixing my hair in the elevator. But why not like kind of just strike up a conversation? You never know who you're going to meet. So yeah, and it's so
Yeah.
important for authors too. You don't think of that. We think of it more of a solidary effort, but teamwork and building those connections is super huge. So amazing. And I guess that kind of you know adds to the reason why Something I Keep Upstairs is so successful. I mean, of course, the content itself, but also there's the endorsements. So let's use this as a transition into the book itself a little bit. Um, so let's see. This book is it's on a haunted island, and the house itself is almost like a character-like setting. So can you tell us a little bit about that, and what was your motivation behind that? How did you create that atmosphere? Tell us a little bit about that setting.
Well, I had the idea for the book for a while. I knew I wanted to write a haunted house story. I wasn't quite sure what that was going to be, but like, there's one particular story we've all heard over and over. Like, a husband and wife buy a house, they move into the house, something bad happens, something worse happens. They realize something really bad happened a long time ago, and they go to fix it, and either everything ends up happy or everything ends up bad. But like, that same
Mhm.
story's been told to death. So I knew I didn't want to do that. But I started digging a little deeper, and I came up with this tagline: for a haunted house to be born, somebody has to die. And I started just thinking about that. I wrote it down in my little book of ideas, and it sat there for a couple of years. And ultimately, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. And then my family and we moved to this little island in New England called Newcastle. It's right off the coast of Portsmouth. Every day I finish up my writing day at 3 o'clock, and I go for a run around the island. It's about 4 miles. And at one point, I'm out on the beach. And if I stand out on our beach and look out over the water, about a quarter mile out, there's another little island. It's very small. There's only one house on it. And it was basically the house that I based my book on, because it's just far enough away where you can't really tell what's happening. You see a person out there every once in a while, maybe a light comes on, light goes off, but you don't really know what's actually happening on this island. So to me, it seemed like the perfect place to set this story. So ultimately, what the book is about: a 17-year-old kid, his grandmother dies, and she owned that island, she owned the house, and she leaves it to him. And he didn't really know her. He knew she existed, but they didn't have any kind of relationship. But he's 17 years old, and he inherits a house on a private island. So he does exactly what you would expect him to do. He turns it into a party house for him and his friends. They immediately boat out there. It's someplace where they can just kind of have fun, away from the parents, away from the police, and just kind of enjoy basically their last summer before they all go off to college. But even that gets old after a little while, and somebody raises their hand and says, "Hey, what would it take to turn this into a haunted house?" It's a perfectly normal house, so what would it take? So they start off with a couple of scary stories, and somebody brings a Ouija board, but things escalate, and the tagline for the book: "For a haunted house to be born, somebody has to die." It's always in the back of your head as a reader, so you know where they're going. But the story itself, the journey, is what it's all about.
Right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, even right now, I'm trying to put the pieces together for how like that fits in, like being, so if I'm going to be born, someone else has to die. So I'm like, okay, interesting. Like going from like party house to that. It makes me very curious. So I love that premise and that and all of that. And even so, the idea that you just were inspired by a house that you saw in real life. Out of curiosity, have you ever met the people that live in that house in real life? Or
Oh,
is it,
absolutely.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the house itself, it was owned by the state up until recently, and it was in complete neglect. Like they basically let it fall apart. The last thing it was used for was a life-saving station for the Coast Guard.
Mhm.
But that was years ago. That was like the 40s or 50s. So the house was literally falling over. A local guy took it upon himself to basically bring it back to life. So he raised about $7 million and completely rebuilt the house. In today's world, it's a museum. You can actually take a boat out there and you can visit it. But I got to know him when he first started this project. So I went out there with his, in his boat, and basically stood in the house while it was falling apart around me, and just really got, the vibes of this place, and just started taking in the history of it. And I've been with him through the entire renovation process. And what's cool is, like, now the book came out. We did the book release party on the island, which was really cool.
Oh, wow.
Um, and then now people are reading the book, so like we're getting a lot of tourist activity, where they're coming into town. And Portsmouth, New Hampshire is known primarily as an old ghost town. There's tons of ghost tours you can take, very similar to like Salem in Massachusetts. So now this house is on those tours, so they take people out there a couple of times a week. It's really fun because they send me pictures of people reading the book on the island, listening to the audiobook on the island, and they actually decorated the house on the island to match what I had in the book, since I did that after the book was finished. So you're literally walking through the book from the story when you go out there. It's really wild.
That's incredible. That's so cool. So, in theory, a reader could read your book, enjoy it, and then plan a little vacation to go check out the locations. That's awesome.
They could, yeah. We've got tons of paranormal investigators that have been out there over
Oh,
the last couple of years too, just trying to find something.
so like on a personal level, then, does that make you nervous at all that like, there's people out there like actually like looking for the spirits and haunted nature of it? Like being that you live so close to it at all?
No, I mean, I think it's fun. Like I see some of them, when I go out on the run every day, because you have to take a boat to get out there. You can only go during high tide, so there's only certain times of the day when you can get to it. So a lot of people
Okay.
will just come to my island because we've got a bridge, and they'll stand out on the beach and take pictures of it. So probably once or twice a week, I'll be out on my run and I'll see somebody out there taking pictures of the house because they read my book. I don't stop and talk to them because that would just be weird. Like I don't know what to say to them, but it's rewarding. Every once in a while they're holding a copy of the book and taking selfies and stuff, and it's very cool to see.
So you've never played the game where you just walk up to them and just casually start talking to them about it and like just to, like see if they figure out who you are. I feel like that'd be kind of funny. People do in like movies sometimes, but not you,
It,
I guess.
well, I think it would be fun in theory, but like after they figure out who I am, I think it would get very weird very fast. Because like, what am I going to do? Tell them about the book? Talk to them about the book? I don't know. I just don't know what to say in that kind of situation. So
I guess so.
I just kind of smile and run by. That's the introvert in me coming back out again.
Smile and wave, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's transition a little bit into the writing process itself. Well, first off, I know you do have a copy right behind you. I'm wondering if you want to spotlight that for the audience a little bit, because I always like to give authors a chance to spotlight the cover. We don't always get a chance to do that otherwise.
Yeah,
So,
so this is the cover. What I actually like about it is you've got the house on the front. It's basically how it looks today, all shiny and brand new. And if you flip it over, you can see what the house looked like when they first started the renovation. And those two versions of the house are very important to the story. I don't want to go into the details and create spoilers, but the house itself has a life. It's basically a character in the book.
right. Okay, yeah. So, if we're getting those pictures, then were they taken by you, or is it kind of just like an artist used your rendering of it to create it? I'm just curious if it's a
An artist created a rendering,
mm,
based on like existing photos that we had.
understood. Well, hey, it's beautiful, and I think that, I even like the metaphor. It's like, nice house on the front, in need of repairs on the back. Kind of just
Yeah.
gives you a little hint for what might be coming in the book itself. So yeah, really cool. But yeah, so the writing process itself then, I mean, clearly, as I mentioned before, the atmosphere is a huge element in your storytelling, but the island's like kind of like a character in itself. So, how do you build such an immersive environment? Do you have a strategy for doing so?
I don't know where a lot of that stuff comes from. I think a lot of it is just from reading over the years the things that really resonated with me. I mean, we talked about Stephen King. Like every time a Stephen King book
Right.
comes out, I read it as a fan and then I go back through it with a highlighter and figure out, what I liked about it and what I didn't like, and how do I recreate this kind of vibe. So to me, a story like this, the house has to be a character in the story. It's much more than just the house, which means it lives, it breathes, it has a life of its own. Like you have to treat it as if it's another person. So I kind of approach it that way. And I do that in a lot of my stories. I've got a serial killer series that takes place in Chicago. Chicago is very much part of that story, because the town itself has a vibe. I've got another book I just finished that takes place in New Orleans, and it's the same thing. If you've ever been to New Orleans, like there's a particular look and feel about the city that you just don't get anywhere else. So whenever I visit someplace, I look for those things. What separates this place from every place else, and I make mental notes of that, and then I use those pieces when I eventually use it in a book.
Okay, I love that. So kind of just like keeping everything stored until it's needing to be used. I like that, kind of like a
Yeah.
storage bank. Okay, cool, cool. So I guess we can all learn from that too. Like just take notes on stuff, keep it handy. And then also you went from journalism to fiction. So I'm curious to know, like, was there a big difference between the two?
I think in a lot of ways, the journalism really taught me how to write fiction. So when I was in college, my parents encouraged writing, but as a hobby. They always said it's a fantastic hobby, but you can't make a living at it. You have to get a real job. So I went off to college and I got multiple degrees. I've got one in finance, another one in business. But while I was in school, I got a job at RCA Records and BMG Distribution. I was essentially a glorified babysitter in South Florida. So if they had a recording artist come into town, I'd have to pick them up at the airport, get them to the radio station for their interviews, get them to their hotel, get them to their concerts. If you've ever seen that movie, Get Them to the Greek, that was essentially my life back then. But I had some very famous people in the car with me, sometimes for a week at a time. So, college is expensive. So I started to interview those people. And then I took the interviews and I sold them to magazines like Teen Beat and Tiger Beat and Teen People and stuff like that. And whenever you work for any kind of newspaper or magazine, everybody that you work with, they have a novel at some stage of development because they're all writers. It's in a desk drawer somewhere. It's 400,000 words long. They've been working on it for 10 years. It's almost done. They would break it out and they would show it to me because I was very good, with grammar and punctuation, but also with developmental editing. So I would kind of help them tweak their books and turn them into something that could get published. After I graduated college and ended up in the corporate world, I would come home and I would work on these types of projects at night. I called it, basically being a book doctor. Somebody would give me a book that was sick and I would make it healthy. I would rewrite it and turn it into something that was a publishable novel. I did that for other authors, then eventually agents would hire me. Then I got hired by editors. I did a ton of ghostwriting. I did a lot of memoirs for people. Like I wrote a memoir for a female politician. So I had to write that in first person from her point of view. And
Oh
when you
wow, yeah.
when you do enough of those, ultimately it helped me, with characters because now I can write characters that are very different from me, simply because I've already worked with real life people and created memoirs and other stories along those same lines. So like all that stuff, I think I did it for 20 some years. I think that's what really taught me how to write. That's where I learned everything.
Understood. Well, that's definitely quite a journey, and it's cool to see all the different like forms you've done, like even like ghostwriting. Like it teaches you a lot about the writing world and different like forms of it and styles and how to capture a voice. And clearly, you've accumulated all that, kept it in the storage bank, like you mentioned before, and they have it all to use. I love that. So now that you have this book out, what's next on the agenda? Something tells me that's not going to be the only book you release. I feel like there's something else brewing in your mind.
No, I'm a busy guy. I write a lot of books with James Patterson, so we've got a couple coming out next year. I just finished up another one with him. I've got three books that are on my desk right now that I'm finishing up. They're three prequels to my 4MK serial killer series in Chicago. Those are going to be coming out soon. And there's a movie, you probably aren't familiar with it. It's from the 1990s called Flatliners. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's about a bunch of medical students, and they kill each other one at a time and then bring each other back to try and figure out if there's any kind of afterlife. And when it came out, the movie had a crazy cast. It had Kiefer Sutherland in it, Julia Roberts, Billy Baldwin, Oliver Platt, all these people basically at the start of their career before anybody really knew who they were. But it's always been one of my favorite movies. And the guy who wrote it, his name is Peter Filardi. He wrote the screenplay for one of my other books, a book called Dracul, which was a prequel to Dracula that I wrote for Bram Stoker's family.
Oh,
So we got to talking, and I told him I had an idea to reboot the Flatliners franchise. So ultimately, we wrote a novel to reboot the film franchise. So my agent is out there shopping that novel right now. So that one should be coming out sometime over the next year as well.
that's really exciting to hear. And I also love the tie back to Dracula. Is that correct? It's kind of like based right on what it was inspired to originally.
Yeah, that was kind of a full circle thing. So my first
Wow.
book, Forsaken, it was up for best debut horror novel. And when I was there to collect the award, I did a book signing, and I sat next to Dacre Stoker, who's Bram's great grandnephew. And we started talking for about an hour or so. But I hit him up for information on Bram Stoker. He asked me about my history as a ghostwriter and a book doctor. I didn't know it at the time, but it turned out it was a job interview. He pulled me aside the next day and said, "Listen, I knew who you were when I sat down. My family has been trying to find somebody to write a prequel to Dracula for a while now using Bram's original notes and journals," and asked if it was something I'd be interested in doing. And I said yes. The answer to that question is always yes. It was a phenomenal thing to work on because I literally had access to everything that Bram Stoker had when he wrote the original book.
That's amazing. That must have been like a dream come true. Like, look at you, like, meeting your people that inspired you and getting to be a part of that world, like in multiple different ways throughout your journey. That's incredible.
Yeah,
That's
I think the
brilliant.
best part was that we had to view the original Dracula manuscript at one point. And there's only one copy in existence. It was found in a barn in Pennsylvania, and Paul Allen, the guy who founded Microsoft, actually bought it at auction. So I reached out to his company, and he allowed us to come out to Seattle and view it. So they locked Dacre and I in a conference room. They brought in the manuscript on a big cart. And a couple guys stood over us and watched us the whole time. We had to wear these white gloves and no phones or no pictures and stuff. But we got to flip through the original Dracula manuscript, which was insane to see and have in front of you.
Yeah. Seriously, I can only imagine. That must have been like just a really remarkable moment in your life. That's awesome. I think just everyone listening today, based on what we're learning here, clearly you're somebody who's not only lived your dreams in multiple ways, but learned from them and have been applying that to your own writing and your own world. So I think we have a lot to learn from your path too. Guys, if you're listening today, follow his path. I mean, if you're inspired by something, get connected into that world. You never know the things that are going to happen, kind of tying back to our conversation earlier. I love all this.
Yeah,
Right.
everything tends to come full circle. I think making contacts, just making friends, going to conferences as a writer, talking to other writers, all those things. If you maintain that, it's beneficial to both parties. I'm constantly working with people. I'll meet somebody, and then 10 years later, it'll end up turning into something. You just never know.
Understood. Yeah, hey, I love that. So that's kind of the main message here, right? Like keep those connections, keep learning. Amazing stuff. So hey, if people want to get in contact with you then and learn more about you and stay up to date with this new book, where's the best place for them to find you?
Easiest place to find me is at jdbarker.com. I'm on all the social medias at jdbarker, and the books can be found in pretty much every bookstore.
Understood. Okay. So there we go, guys. I'm going to put the link in the description box of this podcast today. So yeah, go ahead and click on and learn a little bit more. So that being said, I'm curious to know if you have any other last writing tips for the audience today as we begin to wrap up. Anything that you wish you knew when you were first getting started that you learned along the way?
I think the one thing that I tend to preach the most when I talk to new writers is just try to write every single day. And that can be difficult, especially if you're working a day job. But I was doing 60 to 80 hours a week at the corporate gig, and I would come home and I would still find time to write. And if you could knock out just 200 to 300 words, that's a novel in a year. And 200 to 300 words isn't really a lot. And I really think writing is a lot like going to the gym. You build a writer muscle. So the more often you do
Right.
it, the easier it gets. The more you can write, the better you are at it. And if you write every day, your voice stays consistent, from beginning to end. So I think that's key. Just write every day and read as much as you possibly can.
Understood. I love that. Write every day, read as much as you can. Perfect stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, this has been a really fun conversation. I'm very inspired by all you've been able to do and accomplish. And I mean, in general, I mean, I love, creepy books like this too. So, guys, if you're in the same world, check it out as well. I love it. JD, this has been a really fun conversation. I appreciate you coming on, and I think we've all learned a ton. So, thanks.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. And everyone listening today, again, click on the links, check out Something I Keep Upstairs. And yeah, until next time, guys, check out his website as well. Check out the other episodes of Authors on Mission and take a page from JD's book. Go out and follow your passions, meet those who inspire you, make those connections, and never know where it leads. So yeah, until next time, keep writing, keep inspiring, and keep leading. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.